Hello, everyone. Welcome to Build Your Own Diverse Coalition. We have a great panel today. We have Emily Dowie. We have Grace Riaro. Oh, I always mess up your last name, Grace. I'm so sorry. We have also, oh my goodness, Joanna, and we have Peyton. I am going to kick it off by starting off passing the baton to Emily, and everyone take it from there.
Thank you so much, Sandra Michelle. Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for attending. I want to thank NYLA and all the sponsors of this program. Sandra Michelle, could you turn the slide? Thank you so much. I want to thank NYLA and all the sponsors of this program. I'm so grateful.
Sorry, it's my computer. It's freezing. Go ahead.
My name is Emily Dowie, and I'm the teen librarian at Pearl River Public Library, the founder and president of the Coalition for Library Workers of Color, and the incoming president of the New York Black Librarians Caucus. Should I start, or are we good with the slides? Okay. So I started the Coalition for Library Workers of Color back in the winter of 2019. This was before the George Floyd protests, before our country's racial reckoning, before every company seemed to be tweeting Black Lives Matter. I had recently been appointed to the executive board of a local library organization who told me that diversity wasn't important to its mission. When I suggested we add it to the statement, recruiting people of color to the library profession was for ALA and NYLA, but not for the specific library organization. The situation sparked something in me. I believed the time for change was now. So right here, there's supposed to be a picture of me when I was little. So going back to this picture of little baby Emily, 3 years old, always wearing a crown. A little about me. I'm of Black and Jewish mixed race heritage. I may appear lighter skinned with my dyed blonde hair, and I acknowledge my privilege. But when I was growing up, I never saw anyone who looked like me or families that looked like mine. When I started working at the Pearl River Public Library in Rockland County, New York, there were no other people of color who worked there, except for the custodian. I am the only full-time librarian of color who works there now. I have worked there for 12 years, 3 of those years full-time. I'm attesting to you today that the lack of diversity has affected me, not just in school growing up, but in my working life. Diversity should be part of every mission statement of every organization, whether it's a library or a Fortune 500 company. Diversity and inclusion are the key to success for everyone, and especially for those working in libraries. Librarianship is overwhelmingly white, but that is just not the reality of the world. However, if you're a person of color or a person from a marginalized group, you are not given the same support system, the same opportunities for mentorships, opportunities for career growth and promotions, and the same understanding as your white colleagues. Oftentimes, people of color in the library world are pushed out. I've seen it happen. I've heard the stories. It nearly happened to me. That's not even getting into the daily indignities of microaggressions. People of color and people from marginalized communities, including those in the LGBTQ+ community and the Jewish community, working in librarianship, need that support system of diverse voices. So I created one within my library system, and it's only growing. Little 3-year-old Emily in that picture, I promise it's a cute picture, grew up without any cultural visibility, facing barriers to success in every direction, and needing more diverse voices of encouragement. I created this coalition of diverse voices that the younger version of myself needed, and because I wanted to help other people like me, who didn't fit into the boxes people tried to force them into, and provide them with a support system. Throwing it over to Peyton now to give more insight into what the coalition actually is.
Thanks, Emily. So my name is Peyton Powell, and I'm currently an educator with the East Ramapo Central School District, and I'm a longtime employee of Finkelstein Memorial Library in Spring Valley, New York, where I currently serve as a librarian assistant. I also currently serve as a secretary for the Coalition for the Library Workers of Color, as well as being the first Black and Indigenous female board member to serve as a board of trustee for my library system. So what is the Coalition? It's no secret that the library world is not diverse. It is also no secret that if you are a person of color, you can meet this lack of diversity with extreme bias and exclusion. If you look at the field of librarianship, people of color are more often than not passed over for opportunities of advancement within the field, making the pool of people at the top very homogeneous, which continues the cycle of exclusion. The coalition is a culmination of individuals within libraries that feel enough is enough. The coalition serves as an alliance dedicated to making a change. Through discussions and intentional programming, we are dedicated to come together to build an awareness that surrounds issues such as upward movement within the career, hiring practices that exclude people of color, and bringing to light the unconscious and conscious bias that is sewn into the fabric of the infrastructure librarianship was built upon. So, what exactly is the coalition? A quote from our mission statement sums it up. The Coalition for Library Workers of Color is a group committed to eliciting change and growth in support of people of color within the library community. Serving a network of support, the Coalition for Library Workers of Color is a group of individuals from all cultural backgrounds that are dedicated to furthering career opportunities, increasing opportunities to network, and creating a platform for having conversations about equity, diversity, and inclusion in reference to the racial inequality that exists within the library field. I will now pass it back to Emily, who will discuss the details of the creation of the Coalition for Library Workers of Color. Emily?
Thank you, Peyton. Sandra, could you just change to the next slide? Thank you.
I did. Something's wrong with my computer. I'm so sorry. Okay. How's that?
Could you do it to the next one? Okay, thank you so much, Sandra. A coalition is defined as an alliance for combined action, and coalition building is when members share responsibility, goals, decisions, and leadership, energetically and enthusiastically working toward a common goal. The Coalition for Library Workers of Color is a library organization created to be all about inclusivity, intersectionality, and social justice. So what was the toolkit involved in executing this great idea? When you want to start a coalition of diverse voices like this one, you have to make sure you have system support. Not only did my supervisor and my director at Prover Library support me and encourage me, but when I reached out to the executive director of RCLS and other RCLS representatives like Joanna Goldfarb and Jen Park, they also supported me. Having that system backing is essential for a group like this that starts uncomfortable conversations that people at the top don't want to have. Also, promotion of the group was key. You could say it all started with the flyer. Sandra, could you go back to the previous slide? The previous one? Thank you. The flyer was promoted through RCLS listservs and also through word of mouth, including inviting potential members to a meeting at Prover Library in December of 2019. To be honest, I did not expect over 30 people to show up to that first meeting. I thought it would just be 5 people sitting around a table. The people who attended felt a connection with each other. We wanted to work together to achieve the diversity, equity, and inclusion that had been missing in the library world and in our workplaces thus far. We were going to achieve these goals together as a coalition. Originally, the name of the group was the Coalition for Librarians of Color, but that particular name was not inclusive enough and not representative of the group. We were not just librarians, but clerks, support staff, librarian assistants, library students, and other positions within the library world. The Coalition for Library Workers of Color was the name that represented us as a group. We kept meeting and kept growing as an organization. Our reach has only expanded. Now I will throw it over to Joanna to discuss system support.
I'm Joanna Goldfarb. I'm the Youth Services Consultant at the Ramapo Catskill Library System. So going back to before that first coalition meeting, as Emily mentioned, she had approached another organization who responded by saying, in short, diversity isn't their issue. Emily told me that, and that's when we decided to ask Grace about having the coalition work with and be part of RCLS. Grace was all for it, so we got to work. First, we started by talking to different groups within RCLS about the coalition forming and inviting them to the first meeting. Most of the people we spoke to agreed that the lack of diversity in our field is an issue, but they didn't see how they can help. We started the education process and explained how everyone can have a hand in increasing diversity within librarianship. I'm happy to say that now we have coalition members representing many of those groups that we invited to be part of changing our work environment. After the first meeting, RCLS took on the role of creating and maintaining a listserv, which has continued to grow. We also encouraged the coalition to develop their own mission statement and bylaws, which we will talk more about a little bit later. In addition to myself and the other RCLS liaison, Jen Park, attending coalition meetings, we also make ourselves available to meet with the coalition board outside of regular meetings. This was especially true in the early days of the coalition before they formalized. During these sessions, we would discuss the nuts and bolts of programs, such as finding speakers and scheduling, as well as ideas for advocacy efforts. RCLS staff also add coalition programs to our calendar. We help with advertising programs, maintaining the registration list, and we send out Zoom links for programs using our Zoom account. You'll hear more about coalition programs soon. RCLS is also a vocal supporter of the coalition. We regularly include coalition news and programs in our weekly memo. We continue to speak out about the coalition at the various RCLS meetings and post about EDI initiatives on our social media platforms. In addition to this, there are also the in-house behind the scenes support of all the RCLS staff. There's the business office helping us find funds to hire a speaker when our budget is really tight, updating a few of our policies and actually creating a code of conduct so that we know that coalition programs and EDI trainings will remain safe and respectful places. And having other RCLS staff just stop by our offices to see how the coalition is doing. The RCLS team has truly embraced the coalition and everyone on staff supports their efforts. A little bit earlier, I mentioned the mission statement. So now I'm going to hand the virtual mic back to Emily to talk more about cultural competencies and how the coalition's mission statement was formed.
Thank you, Joanna. From the very beginning, the coalition had to fight for legitimacy because there was almost an immediate pushback from many of the directors, administrators, and supervisors within the RCLS system. But the coalition supporters within RCLS encouraged us to achieve our goals by developing a mission statement. That way everyone would know what we're trying to accomplish. ALA's Office for Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services shared our goals for diversity, cultural competency, and social justice. So the coalition aligned with our frameworks. The coalition wrote our mission statement with input from all our members. Sandra, can you change the slide? Thank you. The Coalition for Library Workers of Color is committed to eliciting change and growth in support of people of color within the library community. In accordance with ALA's Office for Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services, our mission is to create all-inclusive spaces in libraries to serve and represent the entire community and decentralize power and privilege using a framework with 3 pillars: diversity, cultural competency, and social justice. This coalition is a space for library workers of all colors, their allies, and members of fellow marginalized groups such as the Jewish and the LGBTQ+ communities. Now I will throw it over to Grace to talk about RCLS continuing support for the coalition.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to say thank you for attending the last session of this wonderful conference we had this week. I am Grace Riaro. I happen to be the first Latina who is an executive director of a library system, the Ramapo Catskill library system. I want to thank all our roundtables and the support that NYBLC has provided to this group. It was very important for RCLS to support our colleagues of color and to provide them with a platform to change the environment we have been working on for many, many, many years. After expressing our support, RCLS helped the coalition to develop, grow, and took action, allowing funds for continued education and professional development to be allocated. We continue to have an open communication with our colleagues and new members of the coalition. We have 2 RCLS full-time staff who helps the coalition with activities in advocacy, programming, and consults with them. As Joanna said, we help them with their bylaws and with any other policies they might put together. We also are very lucky that we have 3 board members that are active members of the coalition. We continue to maintain the listserv. And I have to say that one of the biggest challenges we have faced is the library administration lack of support of their employees being part of this coalition. But the coalition and RCLS thought it would be a good idea for Peyton and Emily to attend one of the library directors meetings and educate them on the mission and the goals of this group. Peyton is going to talk a little bit more about that, but I think we really just wanted to educate the leadership and try to make sure that they understood where the coalition stand, and thus they will be supporting their employees to attend our meetings and be part of the activities of this group. It's been very challenging to educate our colleagues on the effects of microaggression and racism that people of marginalized groups have to deal with every day. It's been quite interesting. But we also have many colleagues in our system who are extremely good supportive of this group and have changed their behavior and continue coming to the classes. Next slide, please, Sandra. After the death of George Floyd, RCLS felt it was very important for us as a library system to send a message of support for our colleagues and to inform our library community that we will not be standing for racism. We reached out to this group and developed together this message that was advertised in our email, as well as social media platforms and in our website. Since releasing this statement, we have had actionable steps to improve the culture between the member libraries by providing EDA training, which Peyton is going to speak to you about. So I'm just here to ask you, my colleagues, how are you going to make sure that colleagues of color or colleagues who have a different background than you do, a different sexual orientation of what is yours, to have the opportunity to be treated the same and to have a shot at a good career in the library system? Don't you think it's time for the library to open its arms? Aren't we advertising that we're libraries and that we are libraries for everybody? Then why don't we start with our own organization? So I ask, if you're a library director of a library system director, please reach out to your community and start your own coalition. I ask you to be informed of the changes that are happening in our nation that will affect our future. I'm sure you all are aware of the new President Executive Order that was signed on Monday, that it speaks about the 1776 Commission, which is going to have an effect on how students in our nation are taught our history. If you haven't seen it, I will put the link to the executive order in place. I just want to thank you all for giving us the opportunity to speak to you about our coalition, and I will pass the virtual mic to Peyton.
Thank you, Grace, and I really love that call to action, and thank you for all your support. The most important goal of the Coalition for Library Workers of Color is to provide a network of support. In an effort to meet this goal, the Coalition has created programming to gain insight on how to further career goals, build upon skills, and provide direction for next steps in library careers. With the intention of filling the gap of accessibility and working to provide an accurate and authentic reflection of cultural perspectives of our diverse library communities, the programs created by the Coalition have been very well received, and the numbers of participants continue to grow. Successful programs created from the Coalition have included creating an infrastructure of anti-racist programming, which continues to be successful in creating a platform for members to express the struggles or the triumphs they have experienced or are currently experiencing throughout their library career. Experience with microaggressions, the ability to code switch, the repercussions of white fragility are shared in an empathetic and safe space where everyone's voice can be heard. Program topics have also included panel discussions, that focus on librarians of color and diversity in libraries, which creates a frame for discussions circling around hiring practices, collection development, community outreach and advocacy, and creating an overall awareness for the need of intentional inclusive practices. Panel discussions have also been created with a focus on understanding diversity within Jewish communities, and we are currently working on more programming designed to be inclusive of the diversity of groups that make up this field. We have also created a coalition book club where we use literature to both fuel and guide our conversations further. We have even had the New York Times bestselling author, Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, as a guest speaker to discuss topics on racism and social justice as he shared stories and opinions with us from his book, Friday Black. Like any career, the more people you know, the farther you will go. Being employed in a place where you are the only person that looks like you can be both isolating and difficult to navigate if you don't make the right connections. So aside from programming to build awareness about these difficulties, the coalition also wanted to focus on networking and providing some type of guidance and tools for navigating through the field. It has been proven that knowledge gained specifically through mentorship helps individuals gain and develop critical skills, accelerate readiness for new roles and expanded responsibilities, broadens organizational knowledge, and presents the opportunity to have a sounding board for career path crossroads while also enhancing networks. With all this being true, and due to the lack of mentorship for people of color within the library field, the coalition created a mentorship program to fill this need. Individuals were matched with librarians who volunteered to share their insight and experience with those who are looking for more guidance. I am also a part of this mentorship program. To address concerns about hiring practices within the Ramapo Catskill library system, as Grace mentioned earlier, the coalition put together a presentation on the effects of non-inclusive hiring practices and the pushback received from directors who do not allow library workers of color to attend coalition meetings during the workday. Although the effects of this meeting are still unknown, the coalition will continue to advocate for people of color and marginalized workers within the system. Sandra, can you change the slide?
Yes, there you go.
Thanks. Members of the coalition know that the idea of a library as an institution is to reflect the community it serves. But we are also aware that because we know what goes on in our communities, we have a duty to also be advocates and community shapers. As advocates for change, the Coalition for Library Workers of Color composed a letter to Governor Cuomo encouraging him and the state of New York to recognize Juneteenth as a national holiday. Standing in solidarity for the recognition of Black communities in America, for which justice is often delayed, the call to this urgency and inclusion in the Legacy for America was answered as our letter was added to the bill that was signed on October 14, 2020, declaring Juneteenth a state holiday in New York. Creating a partnership has been an essential piece to being able to successfully execute these programs, in which Emily will discuss further. Virtual mic to you, Emily.
Thank you, Peyton. Since our inception, the coalition has always been lucky to have supportive partners to help us achieve our goals, including the Ramapo Catskill Library System, New York Library Association, New York Black Librarians Caucus, and Southeastern New York Library Resources Council. We have achieved great success through our partnership with RCLS. We have made connections with local community organizations like Bethlehem Temple and local authors like Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah, and use these connections to create innovative anti-racism programs. So throwing the mic to Joanna to talk more about our partnership with RCLS.
So a lot of the ways that the coalition and RCLS have partnered have already been stated, but there are a few others that are worth mentioning. So going off what Emily said, we helped encourage the coalition to formalize by creating officers and bylaws to ensure that the coalition would continue to grow, even if the leadership had to step down for any reason. The continuation of the coalition and what it stands for is a top priority for us. Because of our work with the coalition, RCLS as an organization has also grown and developed partnerships with other local organizations like the Orange County Human Rights Commission, and also within our own library community by inviting coalition members to show off their talents and host workshops and trainings for the system. We are honored to have been a part of the start of this group, and we hope that more people get involved and educate themselves about what a coalition represents and could mean for their local library communities. Passing the microphone back.
Okay. So I want to talk about a little bit more about our partnerships. We've also partnered with Southeastern by participating in their equity, diversity, and inclusion special interest groups. Peyton and myself were able to reach a wider audience regarding the coalition's core issues. We reached people from all over the state and beyond who wanted to express their feelings about our profession's diversity problem. We were also able to recruit more members for the coalition. We've also partnered with NYLA. The coalition's advocacy committee is currently working on an equity, diversity, and inclusion training bill with assistance from Brianna McNamee, NYLA's Director of Government Relations and Advocacy. If enacted, the bill would require all librarians and directors in New York State to complete 2 hours a year of training over a 5-year period as part of continuing education requirements. And I also really want to talk about the New York Black Librarians Caucus. So we've also partnered with NYBLC, and I would like to thank them again for sponsoring this session. I am lucky enough to have a mentor in NYBLC past president, Sandra Echols, who recruited me to run for president of the organization. I'm now the incoming president of NYBLC, and I look forward to overseeing the future collaboration between these two groups. NYBLC is so much cherished history, and while the coalition is just starting in comparison, I hope that the two groups can learn from each other. And I want to call on Sandra now to see if she'd like to say anything about the partnership between NYBLC and the coalition.
NYBLC just partnered with the coalition as far as the mentorship program, and I happen to be one of the mentoring. I have a really great mentee. I don't feel like it's a mentor-mentee relationship. I feel like we built a sisterhood, and we have worked out a lot of great things together, and I absolutely adore her. And it's just a nice way of bridging the gap between New York City and upstate, because it's always been the city and upstate, and I feel like we are part of one state and not just leave it as New York City and upstate. So yeah, we're just grateful, and congratulations to you again, Emily, on becoming the new president of NYBLC. We look forward to see what you bring up for your leadership.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And if you go to the next slide, that's our contact info.
It's my computer. I'm so sorry. It keeps freezing on me.
Well, these slides will be shared with you all, I believe, at the end of the conference, so you will have our information. But for now, if you have any questions, Jeremy?
Just unmuting there. As of right this moment, I don't see questions that have accumulated in the chat. That said, we do let everyone know that you can enter your questions in the chat, or if you would like to come to the mic, you can raise your hand in Zoom, or by clicking on the participants in the gray bar on the conference website, and that will activate a button where you can raise your hand if you'd like. Santisha, do you want to get on the mic to talk about that? Oh, well, in the chat, Santisha has put up that on Long Island, they've recently formed the Library Staff of Color Committee, which is sponsored by the Nassau County Library Association. So good work happening in Nassau County on the island as well.
Also, I can share with everyone the coalition's website. I can put that in the chat. Oh, I see Sanisha has a raised hand. If you'd like to talk, Sanisha.
Yep, your mic is open.
Okay, bear with me. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, I'm multitasking. I'm in my car right now, but I just wanted to stress that we're trying to get the work done downstate as well here in Long Island, Nassau County. My colleagues and I, Michelle Samuel of Oceanside Library, and Keisha Watson Phillips, the assistant director at the Baldwin Public Library. We're the co-chairs of the Library Staff of Color Committee. So anytime for our colleagues in other parts of the state, if you would like to connect, please reach out, because this is work that we're all involved in. We're trying to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion program, and pretty much that's it.
Excellent.
I'm putting my email in the chat for anyone who wants to contact me, but I would love to connect with you.
And for the group, Joanna from Campbell County Public Libraries was just asking, what were the reasons for not being concerned with diversity? And then as an aside, like, was that an administrators or, so can you possibly expand? I know you'd mentioned some of the pushback in the early starts for the coalition.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with civil service. I think civil service as a way to employ people is not very keen on diversity. I think it doesn't make it very easy for people to get hired. And there's also not a way for folks to come and work in a library as trainees. In a lot of the civil service areas do not have a trainee kind of position before you become a librarian. And as Peyton said, it also has to do with connections, right? It's all about the network that you have.
A question in the chat from Winifred, who is asking, has age also been added to the list of diversity issues?
Like, you mean ageism?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Okay. I mean, I haven't necessarily added it to the list, but I am definitely aware of ageism, like, on both sides, because I definitely know that, like, it's interesting to me because I know that I feel like I've definitely, like, I'm not sure which kind of ageism you mean from, like, an older perspective of not, of kind of being discriminated against, but I feel like I've kind of, I mean, I don't know how old you think I look, but I have people come into the library where they ask me what grade I'm in, you know, and sometimes I feel like disrespected from that side of things. So I haven't really added to the coalition's list of things because we've been very focused on the concerns of people of color and marginalized communities. But I mean, we can definitely think about focusing on that, if that answers your question.
I'll look for a response in the chat there. Matthew Cassidy also put a great question that I think would be good for the group, is simply, how can I help? So folks that are here today that have heard about the coalition, what things can they do? What next steps can they get engaged with?
I think a lot of it is, you know, being vocal. If you are in a position where you can start a coalition in your system, great. But if you are not, speak out, tell people what you learned today, encourage people to take EDI trainings. If you see something happening in your library that you think is discriminatory, don't stay silent.
Yeah, I think definitely if you see something, say something. There have been situations at my library where I sometimes felt like, I mean, my library is a very white space, and sometimes I felt like there were situations that happened and I didn't feel empowered to speak up. But if, for example, if you are a white person in the library, you can speak up for your colleagues of color who don't always feel safe to speak up, especially if you see a racist situation happening.
And I just thought of another way you could help. If you are working with people, I'm thinking teens or children, but really anyone who is looking for career ideas, encourage them to look into librarianship or library support staff. I think, especially with teens, unless someone points out to them that even though they're in the library every day, if someone doesn't point out, you could be a librarian, it's not something that really crosses anyone's mind. So encourage people to go into the field of librarianship, to learn about what librarians do, about the different types of librarians. So just telling people about us and what we do can help a lot also.
I have a question for the panel. How might you go, I mean, I've seen the different questions happening. How would you start out, and what would be a toolkit that you would recommend for anyone interested in starting a coalition at their library system?
It's a really good question.
I would say just talk to people. I remember when Emily was discussing it at first, when she was thinking about the idea, and I said, I think that's a great idea. When you started, let me know, I'll support you. So just reaching out to your coworkers and just seeing who else is having these same struggles and who would be even interested in forming a group or just having these types of discussions with you. I would just start with talking to people.
And I have to say, and I'm gonna call out Finkelstein Library, because I had so many supporters at Finkelstein, and Finkelstein is unfortunately closed right now, but I remember I sub there. I'm not full-time there, but Finkelstein is one of the most diverse libraries in the RTLS system, and I remember that that was one of the things that I loved subbing there. I love subbing there because it was so diverse, and they really welcomed me. And when I was telling them, hey, like I have this idea, they were so supportive. And yes, my supervisor and my director at Pro River were very supportive, but at Finkelstein, it was a very different kind of support, because these were people that, they were so excited about it. And I knew that they were excited that they were going to be helped by this, and they were going to be able to talk about things that were going on. And they were like, you need to start this. We're going to support you. We're going to go to these meetings. And so, yeah, I just want to, call out Finkelstein, because all my Finkelstein peeps, because yeah.
So I have another good question in the chat, also from Shamika. Are you finding that staff who are not part of the coalition are receptive to your programming?
Yes and no. I mean, the people who attend our programs are not all coalition members. But I think that a lot of the people who probably need these programs and these trainings the most are not necessarily the people who are attending.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Joanna. I feel like, and we have these conversations within the coalition, that the people that come on a regular basis are already open to having a discussion. And the people that you would wish would be more open to the discussion, or that need to hear these things, need a little more of a push to be a part of it. They're not the ones that are initially coming to it, but it's also brand new. And the fact that we have all different types of people that are interested in coming and being a part of the conversation, I think is a really great start.
But I have to say, that's why it starts at the top. And that's why you need directors and administrators to tell their staff that they have to attend, that this is necessary. because otherwise it is always going to be the same people who attend. And I'm not saying that it's not great that those people always attend, because they get something out of it every time. I mean, I get emails from people, I've gotten cards in the mail from people who were so happy they attended programs. But, you know, until you have, you know, an order from someone at the top saying you have to attend this program, it's not going to happen that the people who really need it are going to get the training that they need.
And just to add to what you said, Emily, you also need support, you know, from the top to even be able to attend, you know,
Yes.
so that directors, you know, recognize that this is something important and give their staff the space to be a part of this.
So looping back a little bit to an earlier comment, Matt Cassidy from Docs is asking, is it better to speak up for them? And I believe he means people of color or any individual, or to create an opportunity for them to speak for themselves?
I think kind of both. I mean, speaking from our experience, so at coalition meetings, people have an opportunity to talk amongst ourselves, discuss any issues. But then Emily and Peyton, as was mentioned before, they spoke at our directors meeting group. So in that case, they kind of spoke on behalf of the coalition. And Emily or Peyton, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that experience.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because yeah, because I think the whole idea of like someone speaking for us, like because we can speak for ourselves, you know, because I don't like the idea of anyone speaking for me. Like I think people of color, we need the opportunity to speak for ourselves. And it was amazing that Grace gave us that opportunity, gave people in the coalition, gave us that opportunity to speak. But at the same time, there were so many people in the coalition that were afraid to speak because they were afraid they were going to lose their jobs. So, you know, I think it's a fine line. Peyton, is there anything that you want to say about that?
I definitely agree with you with that. But it just goes back to the sentiment is if you see something, say something. So that's how you can speak on behalf of maybe some wrongdoing that you see is going on, or maybe you see that there's not a space created, you know, and you can be the one to create it. So, you know, if you see that there's not, if you look around the room and there's only one person that's different, you know, think about what that may feel like if it was you, and what type of, I don't know, safeness you would need to feel comfortable to even have room to speak. I don't know if that makes sense, but I would just say if you see something, say something. If you can see, you know, that there's a space that needs to be created, create it.
Jeremy, is there any more questions in the chat?
No, I did want to just provide a clarification. I think I may have misquoted Matthew. He just wanted to make sure that we're aware that he had typed in speaking up for, not speaking for. So I did want to just acknowledge that I misspoke there. But no, I think that's cleared out the queue of what we have in the chat. So I don't know if
I have one.
Excellent.
Yeah, so have you seen a change in the working environment since the coalition? Have you seen a change in your working environment since forming the coalition?
You want to speak on that, Emily, or should I go?
I mean, maybe we can both say something.
Well,
I mean,
my library is a little more diverse than Emily's library. You know, Emily is the only person of color in her space, you know, besides maybe some support staff. But in my library, I will say that I've seen a difference. I feel like because some of these concerns are more in the forefront, people do come speak to me more about certain things, or I feel like they feel more empowered to speak up about things, especially like in staff meetings. And when they see that there is something that's not right, I feel like they're more aware that they have a voice to say something about it, and they're not so much afraid as they were about repercussions. Are they still afraid? Yes. But are they as afraid? I don't think so.
Okay.
I just want to say that the difference, I think, in my workplace is I feel more empowered to say something, but I don't know if people have necessarily really changed.
So my last
Well,
question.
actually, I would like to add something to that. I think I can tell you as the system director who has been in the library field for almost 27 years, we will not have had this conversation 5 years from today or even 3 years ago. I think having this type of conversations is a good beginning. And I think that supporting our colleagues, but not just saying that you're going to support your colleagues, but actually having actions, it's very important. That's why when RCLS talked to the coalition about putting that message out about supporting them, it's not just words. You have to make sure that you have actions. And especially if you're a library director of a library system, your words matter and your actions matter. So I agree, that's a start from the top. So I ask you folks, my colleagues, to really consider supporting our people of color and people that are different than we are. After all, libraries are for everyone. So let's live it, not just say it.
Emily, I have a question for you, and it may be somebody else's question that might be on someone else's mind that's out here. What advice would you give to someone who is the only person of color in their library system? Because that question has come up before in the past, I know.
The advice I would give them is to stay strong, to always follow their own true north, and that people are going to try to get them to quit, and don't quit. Do not give people the satisfaction, because there are people who, I mean, I have worked at Pearl River for 12 years, almost 13, and there are people who tried to get me to quit, and I never gave them the satisfaction of quitting.
Thank you. So on the other side of that, what is it like, Joanna, working with someone who is the only person of color in your library system?
So working, you mean what's it like working with Emily? Because
well, really working with Emily, yeah, I mean,
you know, it was on the one hand surprising, but also not surprising. Just to hear all of the different things that are going on in, you know, our system, in our field. You don't want it to believe that it's happening at home, but you know, it's obviously happening at home. So I'm really happy that Emily brought this idea to RCLS and put it on the table, and that we were able to run with it, because it's certainly been educational for me. I think I'm one of those people who goes to every training and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna learn something new. But I do walk away with something every single time. So it's been an education.
Okay, one last follow-up with that. What advice would you give to someone who is working in a system with a person that's the only person of color? That's the way I meant to phrase the question, is what advice would you give to someone who is working in a system where they are the majority and there's only one person of color or diversity or difference that work with them?
I think it's important to, well, first I have to recognize my privilege. So that was the first thing. And also recognizing that, you know, Emily and I, we knew each other while we were both teen librarians. So I felt like we had a lot of similar experiences, but obviously Emily has different experiences, and I need to recognize that those experiences affected her and impacted her in different ways. And I think the most, just believe her. So when she says something and she says that something is happening, I have to believe her and I have to be there for her to support her. And I'm trying my best to do that.
Jeremy, there's a person who has a question in the, want to ask a question. Can you unmute her, please?
Oh, sure.
Okay, hi, it's me again. I just wanted to also, just coming from the perspective as another Black woman who is a librarian who's been at many meetings where I've been the only one or maybe one other person. Just for folks like Emily and my other colleagues, one way you can help yourself is to empower yourself by creating a network with other librarians of color. Not just your allies amongst white people, but other people who have walked in your shoes, who understand. Because I know for me, there can be situations where I have a group of people that I can send a text to, or I can call or what have you, and they completely understand where I'm coming from. So, and for me, I find that as a sense of support and empowerment that I encourage other librarians of color to do. So in a way, I think maybe I fibbed a little bit. I really don't have a question. That was more of a statement, but I just wanted to share that. That way you won't feel so alone. And we're there, we can empower each other. And then hopefully we can continue with these coalitions, with these, to make our voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
With the 50 years of NYBLC history, that is what NYBLC does best. Provide mentorship, be that person that you can text and talk to and, discuss whatever issues that you might be feeling, because we've all been there. I mean, that was the premise of the history of it. But throughout the years, people have been there for everyone. Are there any more questions, Jeremy, on the outside chat? Because there's no more.
No, and almost by an act of clairvoyance, you had asked one that was here in the in the chat. So thanks for knowing the question without even seeing it. But no, that we're pretty clear.
So panel, would you like to give some final thoughts and tips for people to walk away to add to their toolkit?
Ready to put up a fight?
Thank you, Joanna. Be ready to put up a fight. And in terms of meaning your statement, be ready to put up a fight, what advice would you give to someone that's ready to put up a fight?
I mean, there's going to be some backlash. We've experienced it. Emily has experienced it. But as she already said, don't back down, don't give up, because this is work that's worth doing.
Emily, Peyton, final thoughts?
Well, I just want to echo Joanna, because be ready to fight like hell. You might get threats. I've gotten threats. But we can all be activists, and I encourage everyone here to be an activist. And there will, even though you will have detractors, there will be people who will support you. And I am very lucky that I found people who will support me. And I am so lucky that I had people to help me start this coalition. I am so lucky, I'm so grateful. But I just want to let everyone know that you don't have to be alone. Even if you're the only person of color at your library, you never have to be alone. And everyone here has the toolkit and the tools available to them to start their own coalition. And if anyone needs my help, I'm willing to connect with you. I'm willing to help you. So please email me. So thank you everyone for attending this session.
Final thoughts, Peyton?
I think Emily and Joanna pretty much summed it up, but you know, I just stay with their sentiments about, you know, fighting and becoming an activist. I would say stand in your truth and not be afraid to have these conversations. You know, the best things in life are on the other side of a difficult conversation. So don't be afraid to have these conversations, stand in your truth. There's strength in numbers. So network, 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 network.
And Grace, any final thoughts from you?
I just want to thank the 54 people that have stayed at 4:30 to listen to us and to be open to this conversation. And as Emily said, you need help, please reach out. We have Sandra here that has had many years of experience. And we have Peyton and Emily who have started doing something fantastic. So there's a lot of people, and as well as our colleague in NASA. So there are people here to help you. You just have to reach out. Thank you.
Excellent. And Sandra, Michelle, I extend our thanks to you on behalf of the panel and everyone else for sharing your slides and facilitating the conversation. And I will echo, Grace beat me to the punch of thanking the folks that are here right to the end of the end. So thank you. I do hope that all of you have enjoyed the virtual conference and the opportunity to join together as best we can through the wonders of the internet. I will remind you all that the conference website remains up and live through the rest of the calendar year. You can come back and check out the sessions that you couldn't be in two places at once, which is a thing you never could do when we're in person. So check out the sessions that you might have missed and enjoy those. And I thank you all for your participation. We look forward to a better and brighter 2021. So thank you all. I very much appreciate your participation in the conference and your support of the New York Library Association and all of the groups that come together to make the library community in New York thrive. So thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. And if you're joining us for karaoke in a half an hour, I'll see you there. Have a good weekend.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.